This is CBN NewsWatch.
Thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch for Thursday, February 6th. I'm Mark Martin. Today, the coronavirus still spreading rapidly with the number of cases climbing and more Americans coming home from China. The Democratic presidential race scrambled after Pete Buttigieg's strong showing in Iowa basically tied now with Bernie Sanders, but Joe Biden far behind. That as the Senate easily acquits President Trump in his impeachment trial. But Democrats will keep going after the president. And the movement against transgender athletes who used to be male but now competing against female athletes. Those stories and more today on Newswatch. We begin with the growing outbreak of the coronavirus, with the death toll now over 560 and more than 28,000 cases worldwide and climbing, although some believe the actual numbers may be higher. That number includes the 12th case in the U.S. and a newborn baby diagnosed with the virus just 30 hours after being born in Wuhan, China, the epicenter of the outbreak. 2 more planes with Americans evacuated from China are expected to arrive in the U.S. today, one in Texas and one in Nebraska, where they may be quarantined at Camp Ashland. Mark Rupp, Nebraska Medicine's chief of infectious diseases, says the virus has to be taken seriously.
What we've seen in China is that if we don't take precautions and we don't take this seriously, it can spread very widely, and we want to try to prevent that from happening in the United States.
Rupp says it can take 5 to 6 days to see the symptoms of the virus. In the Democratic presidential race, with the final numbers almost in from the Iowa caucuses Monday, Pete Buttigieg and Bernie Sanders are in a virtual dead heat with 97% of the vote counted. Former South Bend, Indiana Mayor Buttigieg has 26.2%, and the socialist Senator Sanders has 26.1%. Both are far ahead of Senator Elizabeth Warren. She finished third with 18%, and former Vice President Joe Biden was fourth with just under 16%. On the campaign trail in New Hampshire, Biden acknowledged he did not do well.
I am not going to sugarcoat it. We took a gut punch in Iowa.
And Biden may be in trouble in New Hampshire, too, with polls showing Sanders and Buttigieg in the lead there. With primaries underway and the 2020 presidential election coming up in November, one group is keeping an eye on states that have more people registered to vote than they actually have people of voting age in their state. I talked with Judicial Watch's Tom Fenton about what they found. Tom, apart from the chaos following the Iowa caucuses, I understand there was also concern about the number of registered voters compared to the voting age population. Talk about that.
Well, in Iowa, we found, based on an analysis we conducted of federal data created and certified in 2019, that there were 8 counties with more people on the rolls than living there and eligible to vote. So we put this information out. And of course, there's a strong reaction from the activist left, who hates any information out there that raises questions about whether voting rolls are clean or dirty or whatever. And the Secretary of State, who ironically is a Republican, reacted with a misinformation campaign saying our numbers were old and outdated. And when in fact, even looking at their uncertified new numbers, it's consistent with our data. The new numbers show there are 5 counties with more people on the rolls than are eligible to vote. Iowa has dirty voter rolls in some key counties, and they need to take steps to clean them up, that's for sure, looking at all the available data, both the ones that we certified and even the numbers that the Secretary of State is trying to point to.
Tom, how could something like this happen?
The government isn't doing its job. You know, that's no surprise to many of your viewers, I'm sure. And this is a Republican and Democratic problem in states across the country. Our analysis finds, based on the data that we looked at that's certified, is that there are hundreds of counties with more people on the rolls than eligible to vote. Nationally, it's 2.5 million names.
2.5 million names. Let's talk about other states that you are concerned about and what's being done to fight against this.
Well, we've raised specific concerns with 5 key states: Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Colorado, Virginia, California, and Pennsylvania. They have 19 counties among them that have more people on the rolls than are eligible to vote, and the numbers are big. And we're prepared to go to federal court, as we've done in the past, to try to enforce the law that states take reasonable steps to clean up the rolls. It's called the National Voter Registration Act. It allows people to more easily register, but it also makes sure, it's designed to make sure that the states also make sure the rolls are being kept up to date in a reasonable way.
Do you think, Tom, that the voter rolls will be cleaned up by Election Day?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I shouldn't say for sure. There will be cleaner come Election Day, thanks to our efforts. You know, the last time we looked at those numbers that we talked about, more people on the rolls than eligible to vote, it was 3.5 million names. We started suing, warning states. Now the number's 2.5 million. So we're getting there.
After months of the House and Senate impeachment proceedings, the Democrats' attempt to impeach President Trump is finally over. The Senate voted almost completely along party lines Wednesday to acquit the president on both of the Democrats' articles of impeachment. Abigail Robertson brings us the latest reaction from Washington.
Republicans are not hiding their happiness after the historic acquittal of President Trump, with Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell predicting this will play well for vulnerable GOP senators up for election in 2020.
Every one of our people in tough races, every one of them, is in better shape today than they were before the impeachment trial started.
McConnell talked to reporters almost immediately after Chief Justice John Roberts banged the final gavel, ending the trial.
Donald John Trump be, and he is hereby, acquitted of the charges in said articles.
Senator Mitt Romney, the sole Republican to break ranks, voted guilty on Article 1, abuse of power.
I swore an oath before God to exercise impartial justice.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer praised Romney, arguing his single vote on the one article gave credibility to the proceeding.
We made the fight for truth and we made the fight for facts, and it created a bipartisan impeachment that can never be erased from history. Never.
But Republican Senator Lindsey Graham warns this impeachment process sets a dangerous precedent for future presidents.
This sham process is the low point in the Senate for me. If you think you've done the country a good service by legitimizing this impeachment process, what you have done is unleash the partisan forces of hell.
Donald Trump Jr. tells CBN News he thinks voters see through impeachment.
This impeachment started the day he beat Hillary Clinton and has gone on since then. It has manifested itself a few times. First it was Russia, then it was this, then it was that, yada, yada, yada. It's just gone on forever.
Although the trial is over, investigations will continue, with talk already of the House majority planning to subpoena former National Security Advisor John Bolton. Reporting from Capitol Hill, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
In other news, this Sunday, NASA will launch a new mission to the sun that will bring us the best view of it yet. That mission comes as some are asking the question, could a little ice age be in store for the near future because of the sun? It's happened before, and NASA scientists are now forecasting it could happen again in the next decade. The sun develops spots that are about the size of Earth, and they change in intensity and number over time. So what's the connection between sunspots and cool weather? Here it is. According to NASA, these sunspots provide a standard gauge of solar activity. That activity rises and falls in 11-year cycles. The next one begins this year, and the current solar activity forecast calls for the weakest in the last 200 years. Astrophysicist Dr. Jeff Zwierink of Reasons to Believe spoke with CBN News about the correlation between sunspots and weather on Earth.
If it continues to drop, one thing we do know is that sunspots, they look at like dark spots on the sun. So you'd initially think, oh, maybe that's because there's less radiation given off. It turns out because of the magnetic fields going on in there, the sunspots actually emit more radiation. And so if there are fewer sunspots, we're receiving less sunlight from the sun. And so you would expect to see a continual decline in temperatures, that things might get colder over the next 10 or 15 years.
According to the New American, more and more scientists believe this lower solar cycle could spark a lengthy period of minimum solar activity, leading to cooler temperatures on Earth. It's happened before. From the mid-1600s to the early 1700s, the sun experienced a period of low solar activity known as the Maunder Minimum. It corresponded to a time on Earth known as the Little Ice Age.
We know from historic records, and these are very early observations of the sun, that there were very few of these sunspots for a very long period, from about 1650 until 1715. And this particular period of low solar activity also correlates with a period where the climate, at least in most of Europe and in other places of the world, was very cold.
So what they noticed is, primarily in Europe, where they were taking a lot of these measurements, what they found is that the temperatures were really cold.
It was also very cold in North America. Colonial art often shows deep snows and ice-filled rivers during the winters. Dr. Waring says the bottom line is if the sunspot activity continues to drop off as expected, we're going to experience cooler weather for a while. Coming up, President Trump praised the success of the economy under his administration in his speech Tuesday night. But what's ahead for the economy in the months leading up to the election? And what could be the biggest stumbling block? We're going to hear some interesting answers to those questions when we come back.
If you want to be an attorney with a passion for serving people and for excellence, Regent University needs to be high on your list.
Regent's award-winning law school doesn't just create lawyers. We create leaders, judges, prosecutors and defense lawyers, civil litigators, and leaders in government. Ready to become a purpose-driven, practice-ready lawyer? To start your rewarding career, complete the online application, submit your transcripts, and take the law school admissions test by July.
Nutrition, exercise, essential oils, weight loss, and more. It's Healthy Living with Lori Johnson.
Talk about what's in this.
Join CBN health reporter Lori Johnson to get the latest information from today's top health experts.
This is fantastic.
Find out what you need to know to live a healthier life. Watch Healthy Living, Tuesday night at 9:30.
Superbook fans, here's something else you'll love. It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! Whoa!
Millsburg Falls man.
Sorry, pardon me. Sorry, excuse me. Ouch!
Are you getting this?
Earn super points to win daily prizes too, and so much more. Time to get back to my adventures. See you soon. It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
Welcome back. In his third State of the Union speech Tuesday night, President Donald Trump touted his administration's economic successes. Unemployment is down to 50-year lows while the stock market is at record highs. So is an economic slowdown coming, or is it full steam ahead right through and beyond Election Day? On this week's episode of The Global Lane, John Tamney, director of the Center for Economic Freedom at FreedomWorks, says the biggest problem is Washington's spending.
To me, government spending is the ultimate tax on American prosperity. Let me be clear, that's not me focused on deficits or surpluses. I think that's generally a waste of time. But every dollar that Congress spends is an extra dollar of control that Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy and Chuck Schumer, Donald Trump, Barack Obama have over the economy rather than a Jeff Bezos or a Mark Zuckerberg or Fred Smith. And so I think it's always been a mistake for Republicans. They talk a big game about limited government, but they generally, on their watch, spending rises just as it does under Democrats. And I think that's a dangerous thing. I think Republicans should be more about how they're going to try to push push the resources back into the private economy, not vacuum up more of them.
And the word in Washington is that the president may unveil plans for another middle-class tax cut, possibly this spring. Would that help or hurt the U.S. economy? Is it needed?
It's not that it would hurt the U.S. economy. Anytime that you can reduce the tax burden on workers, that's a good thing. But I think it's a myth when Republicans talk about how we're going to focus on middle-class taxes. If you want to help middle-class earners, the single best way to do it is to very much reduce taxes on the super rich. And why is that? The simple truth is that all jobs and all companies are a function of investment. The rich, by virtue of being rich, have all sorts of unspent wealth that they really have no choice but to invest. And so if you really want to drive economic growth, the growth, which is what the Republicans are talking about, comes from major tax cuts on the highest earners, not from reducing taxes for middle earners. No one wants to admit this, but this is just an economic fact of life.
So at a time of record tax revenues, it looks like our budget deficit's going to grow more than $1 trillion this year, John. What do you think of this growing debt?
Is it any wonder that there are deficits when revenues continue to flow into the U.S. Treasury at record levels? This is the market's way of saying that revenues aren't just high right now, but in the decades going forward, they're going to skyrocket. And because of that, investors are willing to line up and lend very cheaply to the federal government. Now, my view, once again, is that to focus on debts and deficits is to miss the bigger problem of spending. I don't worry too much about how governments get it. I think it's a problem that they get it. But if you're worried about deficits, the paradoxical truth that the quickest way to bring them down is to massively decrease the flow of revenues into the U.S. Treasury, not increase it.
And in his State of the Union address, the president hailed the successes of both the USMCA and Phase 1 China trade deals. So how important are those deals to our economy, and when do you expect we'll start seeing some results?
Well, my personal and deeply held view, I'm an Adam Smith kind of thinker, is that the last thing I want is politicians inserting themselves into trade. I think trade is an individual act that doesn't take place among countries, but people. And I feel like that if the whole world wants to compete to give me a bargain, I should be able to enjoy that. I should be able to enjoy a rising paycheck, the value of which comes from global trade, if I want to. And so I don't like trade deals overall. I suppose if there's good that comes from this is that it means that there will no longer be trade brinksmanship or trade wars between countries. Let's never forget that trade is not war. It's just cooperation among productive people. And so what you most want to hope for is that governments stay out of the way. These deals at least give investors and they give the economy breathing room to say, okay, this is no longer a risk to economic growth, because tariffs and things like that are very much a risk to economic growth.
Is this upcoming election going to be a choice between socialism and capitalism? What do you think?
While Democrats talk a big game in primaries, just as Republicans do, where both sides are playing to their base, what I always tell people is some of the richest, most enterprising people on earth support the Democrats. Do we really think that they're supporting these candidates in the hope that they will reduce their ability to be enterprising, reduce their ability to be innovative? I don't think so. And so, yes, it will be billed as socialism versus capitalism. But what we usually see with these elections is that both sides move a bit toward the middle, for good or bad, but that's what they do. The U.S. is not a socialist country. Its people are the opposite of socialists. We descend from people who gave up everything in order to get here to achieve economic freedom. We're not about to go socialist. It doesn't matter which party's in the White House. It's not going to happen.
And you can hear more about important stories in the news tonight on the Global Lane at 9:30 Eastern, only on the CBN News Channel. Still ahead, transgender activists have been demanding that boys and men who identify as female must be allowed to compete against girl and women athletes. But now some of those female athletes are pushing back. We're going to hear why some say this is an issue of fairness for biological females right after this.
When I came to Regent University, it's like the world opened up. I felt like I needed to advance my career and go back to school. Regent was a perfect fit for me. The Regent professors are world class. You are equipped. The focus of the faculty is on each individual student, whether it's online or in person. You become a part of Regent's family. You carry with you not just the content and the knowledge, but the confidence to understand that we can be significant in the world.
Regent University. Follow your path.
Nigerian Christians
in Iran are routinely arrested.
Catholic Christians continue to suffer.
In times of trial and affliction, you need to know the truth.
One of the fastest growing Christian populations in the world.
Join Wendy Griffith and George Thomas for Christian World News.
Young people are the ones who are open to the gospel.
Powerful stories of suffering and hope that affect all Christians. Watch Christian World News, Saturday at 5 p.m. Get Protect Your Sleep and discover how to improve the quality of your life. A free DVD or booklet from the Christian Broadcasting Network.
If you're not a great sleeper, you can do things to make yourself a great sleeper. If you're already a pretty good sleeper, you can enhance your sleep and be even better.
5 leading experts help remove the obstacles between you and restorative sleep.
When you don't get a restful night's sleep, you wake up with an accumulation of stress.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to CBN.com to get your free DVD or booklet today.
Everything you do better with a good night's sleep.
You'll discover how food affects your sleep, how to put insomnia to rest, explore effective remedies for sleep apnea, and much more in Protect Your Sleep. Wake up to your best life and get Protect Your Sleep today. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to CBN.com to get your free DVD or booklet.
Thanks for staying with us. The movement against transgender activism is gaining momentum. The activists want boys and men who identify as female to be able to compete against female athletes. But some female athletes are pushing back against that. At the high school level, there's growing concern that young women don't have a chance when it comes to competing against trans athletes. In Connecticut, for instance, 2 boys identifying as girls hold 15 state championship track titles. The transgender activists say it's discrimination if sport authorities don't allow trans athletes to compete, identifying as the gender of their choice. Heather Sells brings us the story.
The debate over transgender rights is playing out at high schools across the country. The problem for female athletes, when they have to compete against male athletes, they're outmatched. Connecticut is one of 17 states that allow this to happen with no restrictions. Unlike the NCAA, these athletes don't even have to take hormones that suppress testosterone. Track athlete Selena Sowell faced these trans athletes her freshman year.
And once the gun went off, the 2 transgender athletes took off flying and left all of us girls in the dust. I knew right then and there that some girls would be missing out on great opportunities to succeed.
Sowell and Alana Smith, both considered elite track talent, are up against 2 trans athletes who've taken 15 Connecticut state championship titles from females in just the last 2 years.
It's not about that they are transgender, it's about that it's not fair to everybody else in our category because we know that they have a physical advantage over us, and sports is something that should be fair.
Sowell and Smith are fighting back with a Title IX discrimination complaint. They want the Connecticut Interscholastic Athletic Conference to revise its rules on trans athletes. In the meantime, lawmakers in 13 other states are trying to level the playing field with bills such as requiring athletes to compete in the gender stated on their birth certificate. Activists like the ACLU call that discrimination, saying individuals should have the right to compete in their preferred gender. Alliance Defending Freedom attorney Matt Sharp argues it's about fairness for biological females.
Everyone knows that there are biological differences between males and females. And the whole reason we have laws like Title IX that protect opportunities for females was in response to these realities.
Some conservative campaign strategists plan to use the issue in 2020, calling transgender sports weak ground for progressives.
We're looking forward to using this issue in really important elections such as Michigan and Georgia, North Carolina. These states are going to be crucial, not just to the presidency, but also to keeping the Senate. And the voters there are very normal. They're very fair-minded, and they're going to be voting on issues like this.
It's a potential fight affecting anyone who cares about the future of women's sports. Heather Sells, CBN News.
Coming up, today marks the annual National Prayer Breakfast, and speaking at the event in Washington, President Trump. We're going to have that story up next.
Christians around the world are standing with the Israelis. But why? In CBN's free magazine, Friends of Israel, you'll discover why Christians are supporting the Jewish state, how Israel is fulfilling prophecy as a light to the nations, and ways you can pray for the people of Israel. Israel needs the support of friends like you. Call now or go to cbn.com to get your free copy of Friends of Israel.
Heavenly Father, we do thank you for the work of your Spirit, Lord God, with this movement of getting the Bible,
yes,
Lord, into public schools.
Watch The Prayer Link, Tuesday nights at 6:30.
Hey, if you're tired and exhausted all day, you can't think clearly, and you really just need a cup or even a pot of coffee to get through your day, then join me, Dr. Josh Axe, for this new series where I'm going to teach you how to transform your diet and use essential oils and supplements to get a better night's sleep.
Get Protect Your Sleep and live your best life with innovative information from 5 leading sleep experts.
If you're not a great sleeper, you can do things to make yourself a great sleeper. If you're already a pretty good sleeper, you can enhance your sleep and be even better.
Discover a sleep-enhancing bedtime routine, how to put insomnia to rest, learn how to relieve pain that disturbs sleep, and much more in Protect Your Sleep.
Everything you do better with a good night's sleep.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 to get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Don't miss out on this brand new series.
Get the top political news and analysis from Washington on Faith Nation, tonight at 6 Eastern, only on the CBN News Channel.
Today is the 68th annual National Prayer Breakfast in Washington, D.C. 3,500 people are expected to attend, among them elected officials, diplomats, and religious and political leaders, including President Trump, who will speak less than 24 hours after his impeachment acquittal in the Senate. It's a long-running tradition. Every president since Dwight D. Eisenhower has addressed this influential crowd, and it's an especially important speech for President Trump, giving his staunch support among evangelicals. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of CBN News Watch. Remember, you can find more of our news programs on the CBN News Channel anytime or online with cbnnews.com. Also, tell us what you think about the stories you've seen by emailing newswatch@cbn.com or talk to us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hope you'll join us next time. Have a great day.